Greetings, Poe fans. Welcome to another edition of Poe Unplugged. I am Carmen Bolden.
And I am Jeanie Smith, and we are
The Potastic Two.
Come zoom with us into the Unbook Club dedicated to the works of Mr. Edgar Allan Poe.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Poe Unplugged. And tonight we have a special guest, and he's going to be talking to us about a special project, but I'll tell you about that in just a second, because tonight we're going to be discussing our poetry selection from good old Edgar Allan Poe himself to One in Paradise. Like many people, myself included, most people don't know that he writes more than just The Raven or The Telltale Heart or something like that. So we're going to discuss that one, and it goes along perfectly to what's called the Alan Parsons Project. And if you haven't heard about that, you're going to find out more about that too. So let's welcome our special guest tonight who's joining us, Mr. Steve Boilard. Hello, Steve. Yay!
Hi.
Welcome.
Hey, I didn't realize I was going to. Shouldn't we talk about the poem before bringing in Alan Parsons? Or
Yes.
We were just introducing you.
yeah, hi everyone.
Some of these people that follow us know most of our mugs that they see on a regular, unless wanted it to be known. This is 2 months in a row you're seeing my ugly mug. Don't get used to it, people. That's all I gotta say. Some months I might be, some months I won't. But anyway, I happen to be on it somewhat. So we are going to discuss 2-1 in Paradise. Now, first of all, I want to discuss the picture that's on the Poe Museum that goes with this poem.
Okay.
It is very mythological to me. I mean, it's got the staples of what you would know about Athena, what you would think of Aphrodite, with the one sheet, the only things covering her up, in certain instances. So I started thinking, because I went in this with the expectation when I saw that picture.
Yeah.
The expectation didn't meet with the poem. Not for me, anyway. Because the way I was reading it, it was more deathly, I guess, because I was thinking of it after I got finished reading it. I looked back at the picture, then I went back and I read the poem again. And every time I read the poem, I'm thinking, why is this not more of an angelic or an angel type, in my opinion? Because, yeah, see, I mean, it looks more, to me, that reminds me a lot of like the Fae, the nymphs, the dancing around, that type of thing. Who was it that painted the three ladies? Was that a Michelangelo? No, I don't remember. Anyway, it's been a while since I took. What, Dr. Joe?
Botticelli.
Yeah, that one. So yeah, but then when I read the poem, I was going, this is too, I guess, colorful for me. I mean, I could be wrong, but it was just my own version, my own interpretation. So anyone else, please jump in and tell me how cray-cray I am, which I know I am, so yeah.
I agree with Jeanie.
Oh, did I'm cray-cray? I do too.
No, about the poem, because when I read it, and I read it again, and then I read it a third time, I'm like, this has got to be the most depressing thing I've read in a while.
Yeah. See?
Yeah, because
Okay, so
I didn't
crazy.
see any hope to it. Even at the end, it was so bleak. I'm like, well, that's just, ugh.
I mean,
I mean,
I got
I understand it's about grief and loss, but it was just too heavy to me, and that's just the way I interpreted it. I could,
Well, I mean, it's okay if it was, in my opinion, I'm like you. I got a lot of grief and a lot of loss out of it, and it seemed more uh melancholy to match with that picture.
true.
So I guess that's what threw me off. That's why I kept having to reread it because I'm like, am I missing something?
Would it have
Because
made a difference if you hadn't seen the picture and you just read the poem?
and then going back and seeing the picture.
Not necessarily, just reading the poem in general.
Well, it wouldn't have changed my idea about the story. It would have made it more, in my opinion, more Poe-esque
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't have the picture that started it because it has that darkness to it, that grief, that, melancholy.
Yeah.
So it was
So
very
what,
Poe.
I
Go ahead.
wonder if the picture, I know nothing about the provenance of the picture, but I wonder if it's more related to the first stanza where he's
Yeah.
talking about, wrapped in fairy fruits and flowers or
Mhm.
whatever it is. Like he's setting it up as just this angelic, beautiful waif that he had loved in the past. I wonder if that picture is just really drawn from the first stanza.
I can see that. I mean, because I guess, and if I think about it that way, if I hadn't gone farther than that first stanza with that picture, it would have been perfect. Because I'd be like, oh, cool, dancing under like, the fairies and the happiness and all that. And then bam, it's like, that doesn't wit.
Well, and how Poe famously said that the most poetic top in the world is the death of a beautiful woman.
Mhm.
And so I think that the more beautiful you make the woman, the more tragic you make her death. I mean,
Ah.
in Poe's mind.
Mhm.
So I wonder. I mean, again, nothing about the artist who did that, but he
Mhm.
sure sets it up at the beginning of this just ideal that is then gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I, I don't
Jeannie,
know.
maybe the fact that you said that it reminded you of Athena. I think
Mhm.
that's what you said. I
Yes.
know a lot of romantic poets harked to Greek mythology, Greek and Roman mythology in
Mhm.
their poetry. So maybe there is some kind of a connection to that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, we've discussed how Poe likes to intertwine a lot of mythological and a lot of
Mhm.
religious
Mhm.
aspects, a lot of the ancient civilization influences and stuff like that. So I can understand that and I can see that. I guess what really I got hung up on is that by the time I got finished with the poem, I was reciting Annabelle Lee in my head,
Mhm.
Okay.
the kingdom by the sea. And
Yeah.
I was going, wait a minute, I already got this poem. Why am I reading this in a different thing? So it's like it messed it up for me and I didn't like it. I mean, I
When
like the poem. Don't get me
when
wrong. I like
when were each of these written? When was To One in Paradise written as opposed to Annabelle Lee?
So in the
1843, I believe.
well,
Which
it
one?
was To One in Paradise was 1843, but
Okay.
it
Yeah.
did show up in a magazine called The Visionary in
Hmm.
1834.
Okay.
So
So he wrote this because I had some ideas about this, and let's see, 1826 is when he was out of like he was done with or he entered University of Virginia.
Mm.
And so in 1834, he would have been 25. And there's some scholars that think, is this about Elmira Royster Shelton? And she would have been Sarah Elmira Royster when Poe knew her when they were courting before her
Mhm.
father said, nope, y'all aren't going to be together. So I wondered because of when he wrote it, was he pining over the loss of being with her, even though she wasn't dead?
it was 1833, wasn't it, that he wrote it?
Yeah, I looked it up. It was 1834, but he may have written it in 1833.
Okay,
And it,
because
yeah,
because it actually first appeared in his story, The Assignation.
yes, that's
So
true.
Mhm.
he has the narrator in The Assignation is talking about a poet who wrote a poem, and he puts the poem into The Assignation.
Yeah.
And in that place, it's actually a 5 stanza poem. He cut the last stanza for when he republished it as To One in Paradise.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. It's very interesting to think about. And to me, one of the things that I got out of it was the speaker was, to me, he seemed obsessed to the point of he could not go on because she died. And it's
Mhm.
like, so was he so in love with her before her death did he smother her? I mean, you kind of wonder about that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I was
And
thinking all
yeah,
kinds of things like that.
yeah, because I kind of thought that too, Carmen. So to go with Jeannie, it does have similar themes to like you say Annabelle Lee, or even like Ulalume, like the loss of someone that he loved.
Mhm.
But I did call into question, like what was the like and Annabelle Lee would get the illusion that they were together as a couple, and this one it almost feels like an infatuation, to me. Like he was like so like he kind of almost admiring from the far. Like you have the imagery of the fairies dancing around and the fruit, and then she dies. Now he can't go on with his life. It's almost kind of like the idea, like when you're with somebody, that love kind of changes, but it's like that ideal love, like that passion, like when you first meet somebody, you don't really know them, and you're kind of spinning stories in your head, like that kind of love. So for me, I wasn't sure how much. Like obviously he loves her, but how much she reciprocated that love, I'm not sure. Because she was never really like per se. You could say she wasn't really named. Um, but he definitely loved her. But I felt even the poem almost had like a kind of vibe, like a changing of seasons kind of vibe, like versus like the stages of life you see in some of his other poems. But overall, I thought it was I like completely forgot about this poem until this assignment. But I mean I really loved it. I just sent you a message, Carmen. I was like there, like listening to all the different people like read it out loud on YouTube before we got here. Yeah, I don't know. I really like it. I like it a lot. It's definitely up there for me overall for his poetry.
My
Yeah.
favorite my favorite part of the poem is in the second stanza when he says, "A voice from out the future cries on, but o'er the past dim gulf my spirit hovering lies, mute, motionless, aghast." He's saying that his rational mind is telling him to move on, move forward, but his irrational thoughts are keeping him mired in the past, and he cannot move forward.
mhm.
And that's I think very universal. Many people have felt that in the past and today when they can't get over something and they brood over it and can't move forward.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Well, especially if it comes to grief.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really difficult for some people to move past that grief, no matter what. And at the same time, in the poem, like you said, that one stanza is the voice, I mean, telling him that, you know, this brings me back to Emily Dickinson. Wasn't it Emily Dickinson that says it's better to love and lost than to never loved at all?
Now, that
Who
was
said that?
Alfred Lord Tennyson
Yeah, that one.
in memoriam.
Yeah.
Yeah, a
Mhm.
rose is both. Okay, sorry, I got
Yep.
sidetracked. But
That's
anyway,
it.
Mhm.
okay. Tennyson said that, and so that's one of the things I think of when I was reading this. I'm like, so is it that the woman dies, or is it that she just rejected his love?
Mhm.
Was he heartbroken? Is she truly gone? And is someone just saying, get over it and move on with your life because it ain't happening kind of thing? you know? So it's this that, yeah, I'm the same way. Annabelle Lee, too. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, Dr. Jeff just put that in the comments. That is
yeah.
very true. Absolutely. And one of the things that kind of ties with that in the last stanza, and all my days are trances, and all my nightly dreams are where thy dark eye glances, and where thy footstep gleams, in what ethereal dances by what in eternal streams. And so it's like the only place that she can be with him is in his dreams or when he's daydreaming in his trances. So does that mean he is just infatuated from afar, and that's the only way he can visualize them being together, because she isn't like reciprocating the love like Holly said, or she's even has an aversion to him. I mean, we don't know.
True.
Because
And
nothing will kill you quicker than someone not loving you back the way you love them. Nothing
Yes.
hurts like that's it's almost worse than death. Like when I'm
Yes.
sure we've all had those moments in our lives, and it's like this is the worst thing ever. It just, I mean, it cuts you deep.
mhm.
I feel
Yeah.
like that I've seen several movies with this obsessive, phase of someone, and then, they end up, somebody gets killed.
Like, yeah, he killed her. No.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Will. I mean, he's in love with the idea of her, not with her.
Yeah.
And to me, that fits the most perfect with that picture because from the Greeks and the Romans and the Renaissance, it was all about the ideal
Mhm.
of the perfect specimen, whether it be male or female. And this kind of fits, in my opinion, with that. And because I, for some reason, got obsessed with the picture, I looked up the artist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the artist actually is Edmond Dulac.
Mm.
He was born in 1882.
Mhm.
He was a French-born naturalized British illustrator. He was one of the prominent artists of the golden age of illustration from 1880s to 1920s. He did certain things like for Jane Eyre. He did the Omar Khayyam
Mhm.
illustrated fairy tales, Sleeping Beauty, those types of things. Hans Christian Andersen was a big thing.
Mhm.
And here's my thing. And I'm like, okay, so how to get from there to Poe? Because when I think of fairy tales, Poe is not in there. I'm sorry. He doesn't strike me
Grimm's
as
fairy
the,
tales.
yeah, he fits more with the Grimm's fairy tale side, not the Hans Christian Andersen side. But I mean, uh, I mean, it's perfect. Like I said, he was, and what's really funny is that he actually started out studying law at the University of Toulouse,
Okay.
but he went to, he found his passion in art, winning prizes at the École des Beaux Arts in Paris. I probably butchered that all the way. Sorry, people, I'm not French. But at the age of 22, he moved to London, and that's when he was commissioned to illustrate Jane Eyre and 9 other books.
Mhm.
Nice.
So, I mean, it's a beautiful picture.
Mhm.
I still just am like, okay. But
I,
like Dr. Jeff said, that first stanza fits perfectly with that picture.
Mhm.
You know what's funny is I think my favorite stanzas are that first stanza with the fairy. So I'm like a big fairy fanatic, and the very last couple lines about being in the dream. I feel it's like that perfect opening and closer for me. They're my favorites, and it's just like perfect. I like it.
Yeah.
I think my favorite is the third stanza where he uses some really powerful imagery
Yeah.
where he says, that alas, alas, with me, the light of life is o'er, no more, no more, no more. And then skipping to the last two lines, shall bloom the thunder blasted tree or the stricken eagle soar. Wow.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did
That's
get an
pretty
image like
powerful.
when he said that. I totally saw it in my head.
Can really see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Dr. Jeff, you were going to say something.
I forgot what I was that point I was going to say, but in that third stanza, I like all of his S sounds. In
Mm,
such language holds the solemn sea to the sands
mm.
upon the shore.
Yeah,
That's
alliteration.
reminiscent of the sounding sea at the end of Annabel Lee. He
Mhm.
used those S sounds to
Mhm.
sound like the water,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
just
didn't
as
even realize that.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. Those S sounds sound like water
Mhm.
to Poe and to us.
Mhm. Alliteration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
What is the thunder blasted tree supposed to be? That's really capturing my interest.
Tree struck by lightning, maybe.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
think
I thought.
I thought he was comparing himself to the tree and this eagle, where he's not going to bloom anymore, nor is he going to be able to fly because she's not there.
Yeah, and I think the thunder blasted tree with it being struck like lightning, what Dr. Jeff just said, it's burning.
Mhm.
It's burning away, like him
Mhm.
being with her because she's dead, basically.
And the eagle's dying.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I think because of the hyphen of the thunder blasted, because usually it's always thunder then lightning. So that's instead of using the word
Mm.
lightning, I think he just used blasted as to combine them together to say thunder and lightning the tree, and it just
Mm.
destroyed it all.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good idea.
Jeannie, I had the exact same thought last night because I have no life. I was looking at this, preparation for today, and it struck me, yeah, thunder blasted as opposed to lightning blasted. So I don't know the answer to that. Yours is as good as any, but I guess the way I read the stanza is no more, no more, no more. Shall bloom the thunder blasted tree. The thunder blasted tree is dead. It's never going to bloom again. Or will the stricken eagle ever soar again? So these things are just never going to recover. And I think he's just using that as a metaphor for his life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
I would
For
agree.
decades of his life, sadly,
Yes.
Yeah.
one relationship after another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Will actually asked the question that wouldn't it be great if we actually knew Virginia's feelings about Poe? How she felt towards him. Because, I mean, we pretty much are getting things that he has felt about other women in his life and everything, but he's asking as a romantic interest and as a partner.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is pretty interesting because everything we've talked about and discussed about Poe, he has his issues. So I wonder how Virginia dealt with those issues.
That's true. Now, there is the poem that was published that she wrote about him called, I think it's a Valentine.
Mhm.
And
Is
so,
that the one you shared with us, Dr. Jeff, on Facebook?
Um,
Was that the poem?
I'm not
It
sure.
was okay. It was during Valentine's Day. You shared something. I think it was from one of the Poe places, the International Poe Museum, maybe.
Hmm.
I don't remember. I'd have to look it up
Oh,
on Facebook.
maybe I tagged you in something
Yeah,
about that.
something like
Yes,
that.
yes.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it might have been a poem, but I can't remember if it was written by Virginia or not.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think that was cool because they were saying because that's when he was writing one to the Sarah Osgood, and then there was rumors that they think maybe Virginia was actually the one who wrote that poem. It wasn't even Edgar Allan
yes.
Poe. That
Mhm.
Virginia had actually written both poems.
Yeah. And the really cool thing about it's called Valentine to Edgar Allan Poe, February 14th, 1846. I looked it up, and it's an acrostic. And so it spells out
Yes,
Edgar Allan Poe at the beginning of down the whole thing.
that's the one.
Yeah, I mean, I can read it to y'all if you want me to, or we can save
Sure.
it, maybe talk about it later, or we can read it now and talk about it later too. But all right, so ever with thee I wish to roam, dearest, my life is thine. Give me a cottage for my home and a rich old cypress vine. Removed from the world with its sin and care and the tattling of many tongues. Love alone shall guide us when we are there. Love shall heal my weakened lungs. And oh, the tranquil hours we'll spend, never wishing that others may see. Perfect ease we'll enjoy, without thinking to lend ourselves to the world and its glee. Ever peaceful and blissful we'll be.
Mhm.
So
Cool.
she's got the trees going with the cypress vine.
Mhm. Mm. Which are images of death.
Mm-hmm.
And her comment about her lungs, she died of
Yes.
tuberculosis. So
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Mm.
it
So
is.
apparently he wasn't the only talented one in the group.
Mm.
Yes. It would be really interesting to see if she did write more and what happened to those, like if anything were to pop up somewhere.
I know it's a little off subject because I remember he had actually taken her as his student at one point. I remember reading, so he actually was in charge of all her education.
That's right, Holly. Yeah.
So yeah, so he did a good job.
Yes. She had Poe training.
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. What a teacher.
I know. Well,
Well, she was a teenager. So, I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Well, and there was a point where he thought about being a teacher. So
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. Huh.
yeah, for just a little minute. Yeah. Any other thoughts that we haven't talked about with the poem? Anything that came up?
The only other thing I made we were all kind of like talking about our favorite stanzas, and I just entered into the chat that fifth stanza that appears in the first publication of the poem when it was in the assignation. And I don't, frankly, I mean, I'm not smart. I don't know anything about poetry, really. But I can't tell if this changes meaning at all. But his original fifth stanza was, alas, for that accursed time they bore thee o'er the billow, from love to tidal age and crime, and an unholy pillow, whatever that might be, from me and from our misting clime, where weeps the silver willow.
It sounds like she married somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Going
to talk
back
about
to the Holy
assignation
theory
next
that
month.
this whole thing
Yeah,
is that she
true.
died. It's like she spurned him.
So she might as well be. She's dead to him, right? Because she's with another man. I don't just the line about the pillow. I don't know why. I just think
The
my
unholy
mind's always in
pillow.
the gutter. I'm always in the gutter. Like she's married, she's in bed with somebody else. I don't know.
That may be what it means.
No, like a crime against him, like a crime against love, right? Because you know how
Yeah.
women are sometimes, like, I'm flirting with you, but then I accept a proposal from the guy down the street and never be surprised. I don't know.
Could be.
Yes, and I was going to say, and what Dr. Jeff said, we are reading the assignation next month, so this is
Oh,
a nice segue into that.
it's almost like you planned it that way.
I know. Oh,
Jeannie's
and
like, yeah, no.
Don't give us that much credit. No. Or if we did, I don't remember it. So I'm just saying, which doesn't mean a lot. But anyway, so, well, one of the things about this poem is that Steve brought up is the Alan Parsons Project.
yes.
And I listened to the Alan Parsons Project that, yes, Dr. Jeff's got it right there. And I listened to the one that's called To One in Paradise. Yes. I'm gonna hold for a moment and I'm gonna listen from other people before I say my opinion.
Oh.
So who would like to take it up with that one? Anyone who wants to start the ball rolling? Go
Well,
for it.
just a general comment. I love the Alan Parsons Project. I have all of the LPs and CDs, and I saw the group here in Nashville in 1995 at the Tennessee Performing Arts Center, and then again in 1998 at Starwood Amphitheater, which is no longer in existence.
Yeah, no.
And I just love how creative the group is. You know, each album is based around a theme or a concept, and I like the music, the vocals, the instrumentals. Each album has at least one or several instrumentals as well as vocals. So I just love the group. I always have, and so I'm thrilled that we're going to talk about it tonight. And there are several different versions of the first album from 1976, Tales of Mystery and Imagination. This one has narration by Orson Welles, and this one does not. It's just the actual music. And so I think the album has come out 2 or 3 times with slightly different ways. But I've listened to them for decades, over and over. So I'm glad that we're going to talk about them tonight.
And you're right, Dr. Jeff. The original. So they had Orson Welles recorded his kind of interstitials, whatever you want to call it, in 1976, but they didn't include it in the original album. And it wasn't until the reissue in the 1990s, when they did a remastering of it, that they finally put in Orson Welles' readings. And part of his readings were I don't know if you guys have talked about this before on this forum, because I don't understand it very well, are the marginalia that Poe used to do.
Mhm.
He wrote these little, I think it was in the Southern Literary Messenger. He did just little short writings that just kind of appeared where there's like the end of a page and there's room to add something else. And Orson Welles reads those in the Tales of Mystery and Imagination.
Right.
So it's like Dr. Jeff says, I think it's worth reading the album or listening to the album, because the Alan Parsons Project, the first one, as Dr. Jeff said, is in 1976, and it was originally just conceived as it's just a project. It wasn't a band. It's their project was Tales of Mystery Imagination, kind of a pain to Edgar Allan Poe. And they did release other albums later, but that wasn't the original idea. This was just their project. And I learned about Tales of Mystery Imagination through Alan Parsons before I learned that that was the title of the Edgar Allan Poe compendium.
Oh, very neat.
So they interpret his songs. There's several of Poe's stories on this album, and on side 2, most of it is an instrumental called "The Fall of the House of Usher," and it's just an instrumental version trying to tell the story, which is fascinating. And then it kind of dissolves from this cacophony of the sound of the collapse of this house, and it dissolves into this beautiful melody, which is "To One in Paradise," which is how the album ends. It's a powerful, everyone, this is online, everybody on YouTube, everyone should listen to this tonight. It gives you shivers.
You know what? The version I listened to, I went to YouTube and I just like typed in the title. But you know what? I didn't get, and I listened to the whole album, right? But the one I had did not have Orson Welles saying, like,
So
speaking.
you were listening to the 1976 vinyl pressing of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just like the first one, but I was gonna say like because there was a lot of instrumental in it. I think I have my favorite track on the album is the cast of I always say Amontillado wrong, but that's my favorite track on the album. For me, I don't know why I like that one.
I like it.
So I say Amontillado the same way you do. Is that the wrong way to say it?
People say, you know, I'm so self-conscious about it, right? Because I feel like if I say it wrong, people are like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with her? But I don't know. People say it all different ways. It's one of those words. Because every time we go and you see it like performed, the actors always say it differently. And that's like my husband keeps saying, like, I guess he says it like with an Italian kind of flair to it. I'm like, he's like, yeah, you're not saying it right. I'm like, I don't know.
Amontillado.
Yeah,
That's
I say
how
it.
Fred always
That's
said
how I
it
say
when
it.
he read the story.
Yeah.
Okay, so I said I said it right. So I'm
You're
proud of
saying it
myself.
right, Holly. You're saying it right.
That's not the word that's always
Take that, your
bothered me with
husband.
that.
Yeah.
It's the cask.
Mhm.
Because I called it the casket. I've called it the cast as the
It's
cast on
spelled,
your
yeah.
leg.
I always
I
spell it
mean,
wrong.
I'm like, I have pronounced it every which way except for the correct way of cask.
Right.
But
The barrel.
Amontillado, I've always corrected. Yeah, I'm like, it's a cask, who knows?
I re-listened to just the "To One in Paradise" tonight before jumping on. But my husband and I, on a short trip, we listened to, and it was the 1976 version. So I have not heard the one with Orson Welles. So I'm anxious to listen to that on my drive, probably home to de-stress, rather than on my way to school. But I loved it, and my husband loved it as well, and that made him like listen to more of Alan Parsons Project, their other albums. That just, they're so talented, and that album is amazing.
Yes, I've always liked them too. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really, really good. And then I think Cheryl added, I wonder if Poe would have agreed with Tennyson's words, "'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all."
And he actually did not necessarily mean romantic love when he wrote that, because In Memoriam is a long poem about the death of his good friend, and I think his name was Arthur Hallam, his college friend who died. And so it is, an elegy, mourning his friend. So that quotation, now when we say it, we're talking about losing a boyfriend or girlfriend, but originally it just meant loving my friend, my companion, my brother, but it applies to romantic, physical love too.
Yeah, it's something weird about that poem is that I didn't realize. Like, I'm very familiar with a certain version of it, and I said something to my mom because I actually used a quote for that in one of my books. In The Killing Tree, I have him kind of recite this little poem in there. And I remember my mom was like, "That's not how the poem goes." I'm like, "What are you talking about? That is how the poem goes." And she had this completely different version. And I was like, "Where did you get this from? It's this part of the poem. It's not the one I was familiar with." And it was just bizarre because it was like, I mean, there were extra stanzas. It was all like, it was part of the poem. He had the repeating lines. I was like, wow, totally blew my mind that what I thought was like the full poem was not the full poem. But
Yeah, I just
yeah,
wish
sorry,
they would
off
stop
of.
remastering things.
Yeah, well,
Because that's the part that I had a problem with, is when I went on YouTube to look up the One in Paradise Alan Parsons project, there is a new 2023 remastering. And so I listened to it and I'm like, I mean, it's still lovely. It's still got the same beautiful music and the sounds and the lyrics, but I'm like, where's the good stuff? Where's the Orson Welles? Where's that magic that it kind of had when you first released it? Where is it? It just, I don't know. It's kind of like when you wash your clothes one too many times, you got this favorite t-shirt and you keep washing it over and over and over again, and it starts fading out, and then it starts getting holes in it. And I'm like, that's what I feel like when people start remastering things. Or I love the old VHS sometimes, because sometimes watching old VHS movies are better than the stinking Blu-rays they got out now. It's like,
very true.
I'm the opposite. Give me clarity. Let me hear it better. I'm sorry, because I'm old now, right? So like every time I play music from my high school, it's always like, because I play it through my Alexa. Hopefully she's not gonna go off right now. But it's always like, remaster this, remaster that. I'm like, yeah, I feel it. But yeah, well, it's just like grunge rock, and you want that grungy, dirty noise, which is also great. But yeah, give me clarity. I'm old. I'm having a hard time hearing. Yeah.
They keep making money off these newer versions. Yeah,
that is
making
true.
money off of it.
Yeah,
yeah,
that
is right.
Stop it. To me, it's like you can't put, you put lipstick and earrings on a pig, it's still a pig. And if it's old enough, it's an old dried pig you can't get old tired bacon out of. I'm just saying. Okay?
Jerky, or is it jerky's not a pig? I don't know.
But here's the thing with the Alan Parsons project, like Steve said, it started out as a project. And Dr. Jeff made the same comment too. It was a project. It was not designed to be like, one of these auto-tuned, remastered, big things coming out today. It was meant to be storytelling at its finest.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing. It's like you keep redoing it and you're taking things out of it. You're killing the storytelling, in my opinion. The Orson Welles thing. Orson Welles, War of the Worlds will always live as the best. Scare the pants off everybody in the whole world. It's the greatest thing ever. If somebody can do that with their voice, awesome.
We played the 1938 War of the Worlds broadcast on WAMB every October.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
See,
cool.
That's my thing right there. That's my jam.
My mother was born in 1923, so she was what, 16, 15, 16 when that was done. And I asked her if she heard that night. It was October 30th or something, wasn't it? The night before Halloween. I asked her if she heard that on the radio, and she said yes. She lived in Omaha, Nebraska. And I said, did it scare you? And she goes, we were all really scared. We really thought it was happening. I mean, that's how, as you're saying, Jean, that's how powerful his voice
Mm-hmm.
was, how he was able to convince people that that was very real. So she did experience that, the realism of that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
My mother was born that year too, but I never thought to ask her about that.
Yeah, my
Too late
father
now.
was born in 1924 and lived here in Nashville. And I asked him, I said, did everybody go crazy? You know, and he said as he remembered, there wasn't a mass reaction in
Oh.
Nashville the way there was in other places, but
Mhm.
that yes, it was very scary and
Yeah.
unnerving for the people who
Mhm.
heard it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Well,
that just gives me chills.
unfortunately, yeah, being in East Tennessee in the Appalachian Mountains up on top of the mountain without radio service, none of my family heard it, and they never knew it was happening because it was like, it's it's kind of like the story Red Dawn when you don't know what's happening until the parachutes start dropping. That would have been in my family. It's like what are that? Unfortunately, it probably would have been bad for anybody that tried to do that up there, but it would not have ended well.
Yeah. Well, and Poe was a hoaxer with the balloon hoax,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
Hans Fall story, and so
Yeah.
I was like, he was Orson Welles before Orson Welles.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess
Go ahead,
go
Steve.
ahead.
No, I was just going to say, wouldn't it have been great if Poe had the type of voice that Orson Welles did when he went around telling his stories? Can you imagine hearing his stories and hearing his poems and his own voice and that type of thing? That'd have been awesome.
Maybe he did sound like Orson
Mhm.
Welles. Who
See,
knows?
that would be awesome.
Does anybody know? Has anybody ever uh, written descriptive notes of his voice?
No, I don't know. I
That
haven't
would be
read
Yeah,
any.
Haven't
yeah,
fascinating.
heard that.
they know that he had like a Southern Virginia accent.
Uh-huh.
I know
Uh-huh.
Doesn't make
Chris
anything.
Sepner from Poe
Pro
Poe
Museum.
Richmond. He actually did a video on what his voice sounded like in comparison to how it was portrayed in The Pale Blue Eye. But he definitely had like a southerny
Mhm.
kind of twang to it, and he talks about how it's obvious that he had that because not only did people write about it, there's descriptions of that, but like some of the words don't rhyme correct unless he had the twang.
Oh, okay.
But
That's
it's
interesting.
a cool video
Oh.
to look up because he actually like kind of imitates the voice because he also does Poe acting himself. So he's
Yes.
able to actually kind of give examples of what he's talking about in the video
Mhm.
because that's the curator's crypt. So he does that. So that's really cool. That's a cool video.
The Curator's Crypt videos are amazing. There's over, I think it's what on one, I can't remember. It's over 100 videos, and they're on YouTube. They're 10-ish minutes. They're really enjoyable, and Chris does a really cool way he does it.
Yeah, but Cheryl, they said that he was able to command the room with
Mhm.
his speech, and there were some like parts like when he was kind of unraveling where like they thought, maybe he was either deliberately kind of not doing as well or he's kind of feeling the stress. But generally speaking, he was supposed to be a really powerful speaker.
Mhm. Well, I did hear that. I was just
Yeah.
wondering if his voice was deeper or sort of more of
Oh
a
yeah,
tenor
I
quality.
don't know if I've ever heard if it was like deep or not. Just that it had the southern accent.
Mhm. Hmm.
And that I guess that's one of the things yeah. It's not that when I don't like when people say that they have a southern accent. I'm like, there's a difference between accent and dialect,
Hmm.
and that's what I I I deliberately was not really beaten at school, but I was told that I had to stop talking the way that I spoke, or no one would take me seriously because I sounded too much like a hick and it made me sound like an ignorant fool.
Hmm.
And this was when I was in first grade.
My
Wow.
goodness.
I was raised that way. So that's why I was like, okay, so they didn't like my mountain dialect.
Did the
because
teacher tell you that?
yes,
Oh,
teachers.
Oh my goodness.
Teachers, every teacher in that school from the time I started up through high school, mind you. By the time I got to college, I no longer had any. The only time it comes out is if I'm around my family in that area. And it really bothers me because I'm like, why did you do that? Why did you take away part of my culture and who I am? Because, and I understand, trust me, the first time that I went to Florida on vacation, I was like 12 or 13. Somebody heard me talking and asked me where I was from, and I said East Tennessee. And this was an adult, mind you, looked at my feet and looked at me and said, "But you're wearing shoes."
oh,
Yes, it
That's
was
so
all because the
ridiculous.
Beverly
stereotype,
Hillbillies.
stereotyping.
That
Wow.
was the stereotype.
Yeah.
So, and I guess that's why it's not that, and most people, when they try to do a Virginia accent, it gets me because they're putting too much South Carolina into it. South Carolina and Virginia don't sound the same.
No, we
You know,
don't.
antebellum, South Carolina and Virginia, two different dialects. They're both Southern, but they're not the same. So when some people, some, not all, but some people try to do Virginia dialects when they're talking and trying to speak like Poe and stuff like that, I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
He wasn't from South Carolina. Stop sounding like you're from South Carolina.
Well,
Okay.
and I was going to say, Will said he doesn't really hear a Southern accent, and neither does Steve. The one thing I always think about with Poe and how he might have spoken, I do kind of in my head, I have my own voice when I'm reading. I think of how he sounds, and it is that deep Virginia accent, but it has a little inflection of maybe some British, because think about it, he was raised in Richmond, and at 5 he lived for, I think it was 5 years in England. So you know some of that had to rub off on him. So to me, his accent was probably extremely unique in with some Southern and some British, and and then him living in all different parts of the East Coast. You just wonder how much
Well, yeah,
changed.
including New York and Baltimore.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
And-
I
and-
always. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
No,
no, I was just saying. I always thought it was weird that he was said to have the Southern accent because of so much time spent in England. I
Yeah.
always, but it's
At
when
a young age. Yeah.
yeah,
was
you would
learning.
think that he
Yeah.
would have almost no accent, if anything.
but
from
see,
being so
here's
mixed.
the thing. The Southern accent of those days is not the Southern accent people think today.
Correct.
Because like Carmen was saying, not only is there the British mixed in there, but New York was settled by Dutch.
Yeah.
So you have the Dutch influence, and then you have the Catholics of Maryland who came in. They had a lot of French influence in that area, which kind of leads to Poe. So you had the British, you had the French, you had the Dutch, you had the Irish, you had a melting pot of languages that were builded together. But at the same time, you have to also understand he was one of the lucky ones that was able to get educated.
Yes.
Yes.
So he was being taught with a higher level education. So, and a lot of the Southern that we think of today, and I hate to say it, is a lot of the hillbilly language. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I look at it as fortunately, the hillbilly language, they have done studies on this, is the closest to Shakespearean times when it comes to the speech and the words that they use.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those
So,
people. I love accents. Like I love all accents except for New York accents. Sorry, guys, I'm too close to New York. I feel like Joe Pesci or Danny DeVito or something. More Joe
right.
Pesci, but like, yeah, but that's my only one. I'm like, oh, goo goo eyes over it. Unless you're in New York, then you're just like, oh, you're one of my uncles, and that's just weird.
Well, one other thing I was going to add too, his mother was from London. And
Mm-hmm.
so, formative years when he is learning how to talk, she was alive until he was almost 3. So he probably heard her in a British
Mhm.
accent.
Mhm. And the Allens were from Scotland.
Yes.
So he spent time in Scotland with his foster father's family.
Yeah, exactly.
He
Yeah.
got quite a bit of British influences.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
I know Keith knows what I'm talking about because he's a Virginia boy.
Yeah, I do because I live in southwestern Virginia.
Yeah.
And
And
our
so,
dialect, if you go toward Northern Virginia, are two separate worlds completely.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people that overemphasize it a lot around
Mhm.
here at times. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This is not Gone with the Wind. Could you just speak to me normally?
I love it. I love it.
my darling, but
But I mean,
oh,
really, some of them just push it to a hilt here. And, when they have festivals or something going on or reenactments, it's just like, we don't sound like that. Why are y'all talking that way?
Have any of you
that.
been to Williamsburg and listened to the Thomas Jefferson interpreter, they call him, not impersonator, but interpreter? I was there, gosh, we're going back 20 years now. I got to spend a week there as a teacher, as a fellow, and study. And the Thomas Jefferson interpreter rather, used to say university when he was talking about Williamsburg. He was a university. And I don't know if that is really the way it would have been said in Thomas Jefferson's time. This guy is supposed to be like a scholar, a Jefferson scholar, and supposedly studied the dialects from that time. And just that word university instead of university, he would say, and a lot of the E sounds would come out like the A sounds. And I don't know, Keith, maybe living in Virginia where you do, if
I've
that would have been correct.
I've always heard it say university, not
University is what he
varsity,
would say.
but I have heard people pronounce it that way.
Mhm.
It just depends on which direction you're going and who
Yeah.
you run into and
Yeah.
which area you're in. I mean, Charlottesville is university, Harrisonburg it's university. But it was a tour bus or something I was on for something traveling up toward the Appomattox or something going on, and the guy kept saying varsity.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, maybe I've been saying it wrong all these years.
Yeah, but you know what, that makes sense because I don't know, I had a lot of problems learning to read when I was young. I probably shouldn't have admit this, right? But like when you look at the word to me, it makes sense. Like I would probably, if I didn't know heard people say it, I would probably say varsity instead of that. At least how I look at the word, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I used to live in Yorktown, Virginia. I moved with my husband. We were there for like 3 years. We used to go to Williamsburg like every weekend. It was like my thing. But yeah, I unfortunately I never saw the Thomas Jefferson guy.
Well, and also one of the things is when they started printing things, sometimes they would, use A's instead of E's and those types of things and so it would come out as a different pronunciation. Instead of university, it'd be university, and we talk about varsity sports.
Yeah, I thought of that. Yeah, varsity.
Yeah,
Yeah, I saw
varsity.
that.
Yeah.
So I think once more, it goes along with where you were at, because if you look at the coastal side of Virginia, that's where you got most of the rich, like Virginia Beach, Norfolk, those areas where Williamsburg, and you had all the settlements and the higher ups used to settle. So you would have a higher dialect of a language because the farther, I hate to say it, west you go towards the Cumberland Gap is where you start getting into the lowland people. where you have the farmers, the illiterates that were growing up in that area, the mountain folk, that type of thing. So there's a different dialect because of the way they were taught. So
That's
that's
true.
that's what I'm saying is one of the things that bothers me is when people try to put certain languages dialect in the wrong spots.
Yeah.
I guess is
Right.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with Poe. I mean, he was educated. He had, plenty of influence from different areas. So I think he would just had a unique type of speaking, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Well, that's
He was
Go
true.
very
ahead.
well traveled.
Yes.
Yes.
But I can
Um,
tell you just from experience here that if I ever lose my temper, y'all, you will not understand what I'm saying because a twang comes out of me. My mother had it too, and it was
mhm.
just, and people would look at it like, what is going on?
It's okay, Keith. I would understand you. Trust me. I took a class at the university,
Varsity.
at the university, the university one time, and my professor had interviewed a storyteller. Well, basically, he was a mountain man that he interviewed him for his stories. And so he was playing the tape to the class. I was the only one in the class that was from that area. Everybody else was like from New York and Michigan and Texas. Well, not Texas, but those areas. Nobody from Tennessee or North Carolina or Virginia. So he's playing this, and all these kids are looking at me and going, what did he say? What did he say? So I had to spend my time translating everything to these kids. Why, and I do say kids because I was older because I was doing my master's program and they just went straight through and I was old. So, and I'm like, I can see what they're talking about because that would have been how I would have sounded if my teachers had not, I won't say beaten, but, pushed me to get rid of my dialect and get rid of that. And so it is just amazing that I would have loved if they did have recording devices back then to have heard his voice at least once just to hear.
Yeah.
So back to Alan Parsons Project. I love the ones with Orson Welles. Do not like the remastered for today. Nuh-uh. It's too auto-tuned in my opinion. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I mean, the only thing I'd say is just the lyrics of the Alan Parsons song to One in Paradise are entirely different from Edgar Allan Poe's, with the exception of the last stanza. They do have a reading of the final stanza at the end of the song. But I pasted the lyrics into the chat. It really, in some way, I think Alan Parsons they've interpreted Poe in a different way. It goes back to our earlier conversation about your thing, Jeanie, about is this a beauteous thing with a beautiful woman, or is it a very dark thing? And the way that Alan Parsons interpreted it, first of all, I find, again, I encourage everyone to listen to it. I find the lyrics to actually be very poignant. But I've highlighted a couple of stanzas, and those two stanzas are, I believed in my dreams, nothing could change my mind. Now I know what they mean. How could I be so blind? And to me, that's just like, that's how I understand Poe. And that's actually what I was trying to get at in my little story I published a couple of months ago, which is Poe kind of coming to realize, how could I be so blind? And the final stanza there, I believe in my dreams, nothing can change my mind till I found what they mean. Nothing can save me now, which is just such a it's like the Poe epitaph. Nothing can save me now. It's just so tragic.
Yeah.
And so I think there is, Poe says there's nothing more beautiful, nothing more poetic than the death of a beautiful woman. I think there's nothing more poetic than the tragedy of someone discovering the truth when it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of what Alan Parsons has done with this piece. But again, I'm not trained with poetry. This is just my reaction. But he's trying to come up with a new way of interpreting the poem. And the way that it's interpreted is just this very tragic, sad, discovery of just how poorly he had managed his life.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible. It makes you want to cry.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It does. And I'm going to go with that and add on that not only with the Alan Parsons Project, but with all of us that keep reading Poe, keep listening to Poe, keep Poe alive in our minds and in our hearts and everything. I think we are all trying to save Poe's soul
Mhm.
because he's no longer here with us on this earthly plane, and he can't fix what his life was in that tragic years, in those 40 years of his tragedy. We won't say life, we'll just say his tragedy. That even now we're trying to understand and interpret and help him heal after the fact. And I think when we read his work, like To One in Paradise, that's kind of what I get out of it. It's like it starts out, it's beautiful. He's he's seeing things. He's got seeing the love of a woman, but then the tragedy keeps happening. Even though they keep saying, no, 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 look to the front, the thunder blasted tree, the poor eagle that will never fly. And then after the fact, and even to today, just like us sitting here talking about Poe and trying to decipher what he was thinking, what he was feeling, what he may have meant behind what he wrote. I think we're all trying to heal Poe in our own certain way. So
Yeah. And
that's just
And what I try to do, I did this in my kids' book, is to try to teach people that he's not just a poet or an author you trot out at Halloween.
yeah,
He's so much deeper than that, and too many people play up the gruesome Halloweenish imagery and themes in his work. But if you dig deeper, like you were saying, into his life, you find out why he wrote the way he did, and it's broader than Halloween. It's more about the themes, those romantic themes of loss.
Yep.
Death and loss and love lost and all of that. And it's it's just so sad. I just wish I could have been his friend.
I know.
Yeah.
To go
Me
back there
too.
and be his friend.
Well, and Jeannie, you were saying all what you were saying, it kind of made me kind of just think, Poe had no idea what his notoriety would be in 2025.
Right.
And when you think about especially the end of this poem, and he's trying to keep this woman alive, whether it be just because it's unrequited love, she did die, and it's almost like he wrote this for his fans, and we are the ones that are keeping the one in paradise Poe alive in our trances, our nightly dreams, and in the ethereal dances and eternal streams. I mean,
Like that.
I don't know, that just kind of hit me, and I'm like, this is like he wrote it to a love letter to his fans.
I like that.
I like that. I like that too.
And this is why my favorite poem of all of Poe's works is El Dorado. Because it is the equivalent of reaching that one nirvana.
Yeah.
That one moment in time to where everything is so perfect in your life, and whether it be afterlife, real life, whatever, And I think because all his poems were, in my opinion, leading up to that one.
Hmm.
You know, trying to just keep on living and reaching for that dream. So,
Well, that was one of his last poems, right?
Mhm.
mhm.
It was. Yeah, Will said he needs to get going. Great to see everybody. And can someone remind me of our next story? Yes, we were just about to talk about that. And Dr. Jeff beat me to it, which is cool.
Yeah.
The Assignation, and it's going to be on March 25th, 1 month from today.
Yeah.
Same time, same Poe channel.
Yes. I don't say that title because I have so much fun saying that title. You don't want me to say it.
Yeah, no, you don't want her to say it.
What can I say? I have fun.
Hey, and he said, I thought you said the Aztec nation. So
That's a good one too. Not Poe, but that,
Some words with a mummy.
Oh,
yes. Yeah, Jeff, stick it to her.
in that case, I will call the Assignation.
And then so
Thanks, everyone.
yes, bye.
Bye,
It was
Will.
good to
Bye.
see
Bye.
you.
See you,
It's
Will.
good to see you.
Hi.
And then for April, that's going to be on April 29th. And, in the newsletter and on the website, well, we put everything out.
Mhm.
But we are going to take a little bit of a field trip, and we voted. Let me see if I can put this. It's going to not cooperate.
I just got that in the mail.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Let me
Yes.
take this off so you can actually see it. Hold on.
Yeah, we're visiting with Stephen King.
Yes, because that Keith had requested something like that, and we were
See, I
like,
can't remember what I do request, what I'm doing, unless I look at my day planner or notebook. And if I haven't written it down, then you tell me I did it or said it. I'm like, no, I didn't. It's not in here.
yeah. So Leela already had this book.
Yeah, I had that
It's-
book. Yeah, had
There's
it for a
In the
while.
Shadow of the Master
Yeah.
and Classic Tales by Edgar Allan Poe, edited by Michael Connolly. And so lots of different authors wrote essays about different
Yes.
Poe tales.
Mhm.
And so the one that we're going to look at is Stephen King's, it's called The Genius of the Telltale Heart. And I think, Dr. Jeff, didn't you tell me you've already read it? The whole
Yes.
book? Yeah, he said it was
Yeah.
really good. But
Mhm.
anyway, but anything else that y'all want to talk about with this story or the
I just want to second something that Cheryl had said, and that is her last book has such a, I think it captures what we're talking about today, which is Poe being a much more complex,
Mm-hmm.
sympathetic figure than how he's caricatured. And
Mm-hmm.
and I would encourage everyone who haven't already done it, read her book.
yes,
Thank you. Thank you
read
for
it.
that.
It's
But I want to go give you a shout out, Stephen, that you in your book that you did, The Lament, Poe's Last Lament, you make a point of talking about how this guy was really flawed in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
As are we all.
As are we all. And as much as we'd like to put him up on a pedestal, we have to remember that he was a human being.
Yeah.
And that actually, to me, when I think about that, it endears him to me even more. But that there were some things that he did that he probably could have, some tragedies within himself that he could have prevented by getting his act together, perhaps,
Yeah.
and he didn't for whatever reason. The gambling, the drinking, whatever,
Yeah.
But it all went together to make him who he was and the work that he created.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I like about Steve's story is that he's like, what happens if he's given that second chance, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to that poem, right? Like, so everything. This is your reality. Are you, it's almost like, are you fated for this? This is how it's going to be for you. So I like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I have
That's
to say,
like a
Cheryl, oh yeah, your story, like. Why did I not have books like that when I was a kid?
Oh,
I was thinking that. I was like, it was like Scooby-Doo without like the stoner vibe. I was like, I mean, yeah.
That's interesting you say that, Holly. Thank you for that. But One is I've had so many adults tell me that I wish I'd had these books when I was a kid. And secondly, I've had a number of people say, "Oh, this reminds me of Scooby-Doo." And I had to go look up Scooby. I had not a clue what they were talking about.
Oh,
Really?
I was
Really?
I don't know how I guess I was so entrenched in Nancy
Hey,
Drew.
what rock were you living under?
I was living under the Nancy Drew rock. I was under the
what's so
Nancy
funny?
Drew rock.
But
I wasn't under
you
the
would,
Scooby-Doo rock. I'm
but
sorry.
through your book though, you get so much more about the characters, which you just can't get from the TV show. That's the big joke, right? Fred and Daphne go off and do their thing. Like, but your book really, I mean, it was really, really good. And Cheryl, I need to put you on a spot. I have to.
Oh, okay.
When you hear my name, what's your sense? What you taste something like? What's Holly to you?
Holly is some kind of sweet, kind of toffee candy.
I like it.
Probably like a vanilla toffee is Holly.
Okay, so the whole time I was like, because I listened to your interview, and then when I was reading the book, that's like something you really have. I was like, oh my goodness,
synesthesia.
Yeah. I was not gonna try and say that wrong, but oh my goodness, yeah, so
whenever
cool.
Whenever I do school author visits, before I go, I always get the class roster from the teacher, and I do all of the, like, what does this make me taste or smell for every name on the list. And then I send that back to her, because invariably the kids, that's the first thing they will ask me. What's my name? And then what's my name make taste? What's my brother's name? And I say, ask your teacher, already put it down.
Sorry, I know. I was like, I'm such a little kid. I'm like, do I really have to wait till next October? I was like, she's killing me.
No, you can. No, you can email me. You can contact me anytime, Holly.
I'm like such a little kid, but yeah,
anytime.
Such a great, like, I mean, I don't want to, I know I'm like so off track here, but yes, you guys, like, I've been so spoiled with the Poe stories. Like, I told Carmen, like, I took a break, I read all these I've like read only Poe stories, like, caught up with everything. Yeah, so good.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
It's been great. I mean, the last two authors, oh look, they're both here that we talked to.
And thank you both.
And then of course we have Dr. Jeff back in the day. He was one of our alums now.
Yes. And I do look forward to Dr. Jeff's books once I actually watch the show. It's fun. I keep seeing Barnaby.
He is a great writer, and I learned so much about Dan Curtis. And I got to get more of his books, because I thoroughly enjoyed reading that, especially the Dark Shadows stuff.
Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
I used to race home every day from school to watch Dark Shadows.
Same here.
Love that.
So I know who Barnaby is, right? And I keep
Barnabas.
like I take signs.
Barnabas.
Yeah, so I take signs from the universe. So I keep getting pictures of him in my Instagram feed. So it's like telling me like I need to like carry this up. I was like, oh, okay. Like, okay, I gotta do this.
Yeah. And just, a few months ago, I just finished watching it from start to finish. It took me a year and a half or so. I can't remember.
Good for you. Yeah.
And it's so good. I just want to start watching it again, but I'm going to try to give it a break to like go, oh, I need to watch it.
Well, I've been binging on 1991 Dark Shadows too.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, I remember that one.
Yeah. I need to watch that. I've got one more of the movies to watch too.
Oh, yeah.
I love Scooby-Doo though too, because they do have the Vincent Price character on Scooby-Doo, Vincent Van Gogh. Yeah.
Well, I have to admit, I read the Scooby-Doo comics before anything. So, because, there's a whole world of comics way before it became a television show. So.
No, I didn't know they had those.
I've never checked out the comics.
Yep. So
it's good. They're good. I mean, Scooby-Doo premiered the fall of the year I was born. So it's my age, and I have grown up. I still watch Scooby-Doo because,
Hey, I'm right there with you, Keith. Just don't
I love it. Every time they come out with a new one on the Cartoon Network, I'm glued to it. I'm like, okay, what are they going to do this time?
Dude, like Mystery Inc. is my jam, but I've totally been Velma for Halloween. I could never quite pull off Daphne, but I was a pretty darn good Velma.
I just got a book. I just got a book in the mail called the title is Those Meddling Kids.
Nice.
And it's kind of
a shirt like that.
It's kind of an adult version of it's not those characters, but I mean, just there's a dog and there's for
Mhm.
for adults.
Okay.
I haven't
Yeah.
read it yet, but my sister suggested. Unfortunately, I have two bookcases called the to be read bookcase, and my sisters send me books, and people suggest books, and I go out and buy the books, and then I put them on that shelf, and I'm going, oh, I'm going to read this one next, and I lay one down, and the next thing I know, I'm
Mhm.
picking one up in the bedroom, and the next thing I know, I've got one in the office, and it's a sickness. I know there needs to be an intervention. I've got more books than I do furniture.
No, it doesn't.
I can relate. I can so relate. Like my to be reading, whatever the TBR list. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness! Like, listen, I have to just take a break and just catch up on occasion. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I have 10 tubs of 18-gallon tubs full of books in storage because they won't fit in my apartment. That's not counting how many bookcases I have full of books. So we're not going to go there.
That's why I switched to Kindle. Like seriously, unless like you know what I mean.
We're not going to talk about Kindle either.
Oh no.
I've switched.
No.
Sorry,
All right.
guys. I
Yeah.
prefer. I switched to Kindle. Sorry, I admit it.
Oh,
I
I
switched to
have
Kindle.
Kindle too. That's why I don't want to talk about it because we're going to talk about that. All right, so we got to move on. We got to move on. Carmen's gotten this twitch over here. I can see it.
Yeah,
It's a
sorry. I'm like
school night.
so off track
All right.
tonight. I apologize.
Oh no, it's all good. It's all good. This is good, good company. So
Yes, it is. Good discussions all around. That's
Yes.
great.
yes,
Yeah, thanks for making this happen.
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah,
Everyone take care.
this is one of my
Yeah.
favorite things. Looking forward to at the end of each
Mhm.
month. So it's awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's been wonderful. It's been great. We all love you. Thank you for joining us and keep
Yes.
doing it
Thank you.
over and over and over again.
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you guys, and
Bye.
we will see you next
See you
month.
next time.
Steve.
Until
Yep.
next time. Bye bye.
Bye.
All right,
Bye.
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 Bye.